the podcast that connects the dots for business leaders to drive revenue through effective marketing strategy. We chat with marketing experts on different topics that will help you ramp up your revenue. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms. Marketing Demystified, the podcast, is presented to you by GrowGetter, your partner in growth marketing. And here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered with actionable tips to transform your marketing game? You're in the right place. Welcome to Marketing Demystified. I'm your host, Jenn Mancusi, CEO and co-founder of GrowGetter, your growth marketing partner. Now, the next generation of marketers is upon us, and it's looking way different from previous generations. Expectations of results are higher than they've ever been before. Everything's being measured, sometimes things that shouldn't be. And now there's AI. How are these next generation of marketers getting ready? To discuss that topic, I'm joined by global marketing leader in SaaS and high tech, Cheryl Rodness, area vice president, marketing and strategic growth initiatives at Calix. She is developing next gen marketers through intern programs and early career growth programs. So excited to talk to her today. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Good morning, Jen. Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here. This is a topic I'm really passionate about.
Absolutely. Everybody should be, really. I mean, this is developing the new sort of era of marketing and marketers and skills. And it's so critical to be on top of what's happening today.
Absolutely. And we tend to forget that it's really important to build our pipeline and to build the next generation of marketers. We get so caught up in what we have to do every day and focusing on having seasoned people in the roles to get things done that we really forget about the fact that we've got to build a pipeline for the next generation and to keep our companies moving and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like marketing as a function, especially, it's that sort of new pipeline of marketers, as you talk about, are even smarter at marketing than maybe the seasoned professionals, just because of the way the function changes so often. So it's kind of the opposite of maybe some other functions where experience is really a benefit, where marketing, sometimes less experience is a benefit.
Well, marketing has changed so much since I entered the field many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, you thought about marketing from strictly the 4 Ps, and you were either classically trained through consumer packaged goods or you weren't, and you kind of learned along the way. But in many ways, it was much simpler. We didn't have the fragmentation that we have today. You didn't have the emphasis on data and analytics. You really just focused in on the 4 Ps. Today, while very important, there are a lot more things you've got to be thinking about. And there are a lot more ways to reach an audience than you did, 20 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think that today's marketing path is better than it was 30, 20, 15 years ago? Or I don't know.
It's different. I don't know if it's better. You certainly have a lot more choice today than you did. Like I said, there's huge fragmentation in the function. When I started, you didn't think about, do I want to be focused on social marketing? Do I want to be focused on influencer marketing? Do I want to be focused on product marketing? The whole myriad of areas that you can really specialize in now. You're much more of a generalist. Today, you've got huge choices, but I think those choices can also take you down perhaps too much of a specialization and not give you the well-roundedness that you need as a marketer to fully understand the function and everything that fits into it.
Yeah, that generalist path is actually a really important maybe starting point for a lot of marketers before going down a specialty route. But I think, I'm wondering also, like, with all the choice and all the fragmentation and all the sort of new skills that are required, like, are things like those tried and true 4 Ps, are they still relevant? Are they still important to be thinking about? Or maybe what are, in addition to the sort of tried and true, what skills are important for people to learn just entering the marketing field today?
Well, the 4 Ps will always be super important. If you're not thinking about product and price and placement and promotion, then those are at the core of any marketer's role. But I think that there's a skill that's developed over the last 5 to 10 years that didn't exist when I entered the field. And that's really around analytics. A good marketer has to have an analytical mind. Everyone talks about data. From my perspective, you have data, you have insights, and then you have action. You have to have an analytical mind to read the data, to interpret the insights, and then know what to do with it. That didn't exist when I started 20 years ago. And to be a really good marketer today, regardless of your role, that has to be first and foremost. I'd say the other key skill that a marketer needs today that has always existed is really to be a storyteller. You need to be a really, really good storyteller to get your thoughts across, to get your value proposition across, to get people to really understand the value that you're bringing to the market and how it matters to their customers or their consumers. So for me, those are the two skills that really matter today as a new marketer, and analytics just didn't exist when I started.
Yeah, they didn't exist when I started either, which is so wild. And I totally agree with you on the data piece. Like, I work with students at the university through an alumni job shadow program that we do every year. And every time I talk to young marketers, they always ask, like, what's the most important thing? I always say, actually the marketing ops, the analytics, the data piece is more important than anything else, because as marketing continues to evolve and change, it's so important to be able to measure what's working and what's not. So knowing the tactics that work the best actually isn't that important, because that's going to continue to evolve. But knowing how to measure it is something that will maintain regardless of what marketing looks like in 10, 15, 30 years from now.
Exactly. If you take a look at Scott Brinker's chart, thousands of apps have evolved over the last
Mhm.
few years, and they will continue to evolve, and some will fall off of that chart. Those just become, to your point, tactics or channels or ways in which to reach your audience. But if you don't understand what's working, you can use all the channels in the world and nothing's going to help you. But, I go back to the idea of it's not just data, it's the insights that you cull from that data and the action that you take. I think sometimes new marketers or students get really caught up in data. I need to collect data, I need to consume data. But if you don't understand what that data is telling you and then take the action on it, having data is not going to help you.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And then what you said about storytelling is so closely linked to that, because a lot of times as a marketer, you're not necessarily the person taking that action, but you need to be able to communicate internally the data and the insights to be able to, influence the strategy of your business, as well as storytell out to your audience and your consumers or customers, potential customers. So that skill is going to translate both internally and externally.
I agree. And good storytelling is actually a really rare skill to find.
Mhm.
People don't know how to tell excellent stories. They tend to get caught up in too many details or not getting to the point well enough. But a good storyteller, one who can bring in analogies or, um, you know, bring other ideas in to make your point, can get so far in being able to bring customers around to understanding what you're trying to communicate with them. To me, storytelling is a fine, fine art.
Yeah, it is, and it's a hard one to practice
Yeah.
and to learn, but it's definitely so critical. Now, I mean, to that point, like learning and sort of developing, like what role does an intern program play in kind of developing this new generation of marketers?
To me, intern programs are so incredibly important, and I don't think enough companies really understand how to create good ones. And it's taken us some time to really develop one that I think is truly best in class. An intern program helps both the student and the company. For a student, it gives them the opportunity to learn about business, understand what happens, get different experiences, and figure out where they want to take their career. For a company, it gives you an incredible opportunity to start to build your talent pipeline. And I don't think enough companies take advantage of that. When you build an intern program, you get the opportunity to bring in fresh ideas, young and eager students who want to learn and who are going to help you build that next generation for your pipeline, for your talent. It allows you to bring in people across the organization, try people out, figure out, what type of new student or new grad is going to work in your organization, and cultivate those people over their 3 and 4 year career, and then bring them in. They've got experience and they can come in and they don't have that huge ramp up period because they've worked with you over a summer. And an intern program provides so many benefits for both the student and the company. I can't say enough about the importance of building one.
Yeah, for sure. And you said like, companies tend to struggle with like how to create a good intern program. Like what does good look like? What's the different how do you know you've got a good intern program or a bad one?
Um, I think at the end of your program, to be able to say you got what you needed out of them in terms of reaching your business goals and the student learned something, allows you to feel like you've done the right thing. But I've built a program that has sort of multi-tenants behind it. And it actually starts with the hiring process and building your job descriptions. When you bring in an intern or build an intern program, you can't think about it as just bringing in someone who's going to do the grunt work, who's going to do the work that your full-time staff don't have time to do, or they've thrown to the bottom of the pile. That's not a good intern program. The way we think about it and the way we've built it is you start with a job description. What is it that you need them to do? And you've got to think through the projects you're actually going to have them work through over the summer. If you don't know what that is, then you're going to fail from the get-go. Then we think about it in terms of onboarding them properly. How do you teach them about your company so that their first few days or their first week, they're actually doing a synthesized onboarding program that you would bring on for brand new hires. So they learn about your company, they understand who your customers are, they understand your business objectives, your strategic priorities. And then we build a program around that. So they have their job assignments, they have their teams, they have their managers, but then we bring a cohort together and all of those students meet every single week. And we bring them together to talk about their experiences, to have a safe place to ask questions, to ask one another how they're doing and what they're learning. And we bring in speakers for them every single week to talk about different things going on in the company, to understand the company's business objectives, to understand different functions. We bring in HR teams to teach them about DE&I, to teach them about how to build their resume. Then we actually introduce them to our senior leadership. We have them meet with the executive team over the course of the summer, learn about what it's like to run a department. What does that mean? Understand the business priorities. Then we have them meet with their functional leader. And again, as a cohort, to learn about that function and go deep. And then we allow them to ask for one-on-ones if there are different departments that they want to talk to, different functional heads, different team leaders, so that they're getting a really good, rich understanding of the company and what the business priorities are. And then one of the other really important things that we do is we have them produce a presentation for their functional leader at the end of the summer. Talk about not what you've done, but what have you done that has met your department's business goals and objectives. And in many cases, I work with them to fine tune that presentation to make sure that it's really demonstrating the value they brought back to the company. And when you do that, they have an understanding of how they contributed to the business growth and the business health, not, I did these 10 things over the summer. And it gives the business leader the understanding of how they contributed back to that team's value and helps them determine, was that really helpful during the summer? And then the other thing we do is we evaluate the interns. And I recommend this for any company running an intern program. We do something like a 4-box where you're looking and ranking the students as to how they did. And that helps you determine, who do you want to bring back the next year? Who do you want to bring back full time? But you have a process throughout those 10, 12, 14 weeks to understand what they're doing, how they're contributing to the business, your goals, your objectives, the value to the company, and did they meet those goals?
That is like such an amazing. First of all, thank you for walking us through that. That structure is amazing. I mean, what you said about like, you don't want these people just kind of doing the work that nobody else has time to do. You're actually trying to have them contribute to your business and you're contributing to them. I think is incredible. I can remember having friends in university who had internships, and some had these great experiences. And one in particular I remember was interning for a business where all he did the entire summer was cold call, and like walked in, had a list, cold call all day, every day, and left the field completely. Like didn't pursue that major that he had, and went in a totally different direction. And, probably the right universal path for that person. But imagine the different experience if he had a structure. He was the only intern. I think it's so interesting that you're hiring a cohort of interns. You're not looking for just a single person. And I guess I wonder, like, this, like, what type of company or what stage of company maybe is best suited for this type of program? Because, hiring 3 or 4 interns and having all of this weekly structure, it feels like, maybe an early stage startup won't be able to accommodate all of this and do it properly. Like, when are you ready to start a program like this?
I think any company can run a program as long as you probably have 3 interns at least,
Mm,
because they need to form their own kind of cohort. Having a single intern isn't as beneficial because they're not necessarily learning as much or learning from one another, and you can't structure it as well. Not to say that having a single intern is a bad thing either. I think any company, if they can bring on an intern and give them value and have the intern get value, there's something in it. But I think, what I described can scale up or scale down. When we started our intern program, I think the first year we had 7 interns. Last year we had 65. I think this year we're going to probably have about half of that. And so um, you just scale it to the number of students that you have. But I think the really important thing is you have a few interns that can talk amongst themselves so that they can share experiences. And it gives them a safe place. When we bring them in weekly, it gives them a safe space to talk as well, to share their experience. If things aren't going well for them, they can talk about it. Or if they're learning what one intern is getting out of their team versus another, we can talk about it and share those experiences and bring them back to their managers and try to make sure that everyone is getting the best experience possible. If you're a single intern, you don't know what to expect. You don't know if you're getting a good experience or not. You don't know if you're getting the best out of that company, and vice versa for the company. One single intern, you don't know, are you getting the best you could be? What could be gained if you had more?
Yeah, absolutely. How has this changed for you in the last few years with sort of remote and hybrid working? Like, do you have your interns in the office? Are they remote? Is it a mix? And do you think that's, has an impact on the experience?
Well, we are a fully remote company, so we don't have interns in the office. And I think when we really scaled up, it was during COVID. So that taught us a lot, and taught us a lot about working with students during COVID and in a fully remote environment. Some adapted really well, some struggled. I will tell you that there are certainly things that we had to teach interns that you might not necessarily think about. Now, students are used to working in their dorm room, particularly during COVID or now when they're just working remote. So you have to remind them we have backgrounds for you to use so that you don't have to take a look at a messy dorm room. We don't have to see your bathroom door opening and closing. We don't have to see that you didn't make your bed. But you have to remind them of these things. I think that's part of the challenge of students is that if you're not teaching them these things, they don't necessarily always know better, although you would expect they would. You have to tell them that they shouldn't be showing up in just, old, t-shirts, that they should still be presentable, that they need to have a proper microphone and keep their camera on, and, basic things that we learned early on going into the office. Now that you have a lot more remote internships and remote workers, they need to be taught certain things that they wouldn't have necessarily expected or they knew being college students.
Yeah, for sure. That's so interesting, the backgrounds. It's like, yeah, and you can just put this behind you and no one will have to see. It's totally fine. Make sure you're not in your pajamas. But yeah, they're children. I mean, really, like I thought I was an adult when I was 17, 18 years old, but I was not. And not being forced to, like, there was something about getting dressed in your office clothes and going to your internship or your first job. And, I think I probably dressed more professionally then than I do today. But times have changed, and you do have to kind of, when you're sitting home in the same space where you eat your Easy Mac and sleep and watch movies, then there is an education component.
Exactly. And even just making sure your camera is on. We make sure all of our interns have proper equipment. We require not just our interns, but our employees to have their cameras on all the time, because when you're remote, you need to create that face-to-face connection. The only way you can do it is with your camera on. But look, if you're going to have lunch because you've got a call happening at 12 or 1 o'clock or whatever time it is, just turn your camera off for a few minutes. Tell people in the chat, hey, I'm having lunch, I'm off camera, but then come back on. Don't eat on, don't necessarily eat on camera. You can, but just be mindful of who's around. So basic etiquette things that you wouldn't think about still have to be taught to these students. And that's okay. That's part of our program. We go through some of that with them the first couple of weeks. Hey, just in case you haven't done this before, remember, have your camera on. Don't necessarily eat on camera. Make sure you've got a fake background on. If you don't want to, make sure you're in a proper space in the background. We don't want to see you in your bedroom. Basic stuff that they haven't necessarily thought about.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you create space for maybe like this could be beyond the intern conversation, just remote, we're fully remote business as well. And I know there's so many more out there than were before, but do you create space for people to have personal conversation as opposed to business conversation? And how is that structured, and how intentional is that?
So for our intern program, absolutely. There are a couple of ways we do it. That weekly call that we have, it always starts with, hey, talk about what's been going on, get to know one another. I actually encourage them to set up their own WhatsApp group without me included. I want them to have that safe space to talk amongst themselves, talk about me, talk about whoever they want. So we encourage that at the beginning of the internship. Set up your own WhatsApp group, talk amongst yourselves, share thoughts, share ideas. We also do, Jeopardy. We'll set up a Jeopardy game one week, and we do it around the company after you've done your onboarding. Hey, let's have a fun Jeopardy game about the company, and what have you learned? What do you know? We do on National Intern Day, we'll send them out some sort of treat and just do like a coffee social, ice cream social, whatever it is. But we always encourage the beginning of those calls just to be social, talk, get to know one another, talk amongst yourselves, get to know one another. As employees at our company, we absolutely do it. We start every call with, people always jumping on early, talking, to one another. How was your weekend? What are you up to? We have a chatter channel where we recognize people. In fact, this morning, somebody had recently gotten married. We were all congratulating them. Their manager had put up wedding photos that they had sent in. So we encourage that social interaction, getting to know one another, creating that camaraderie because we are so remote.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so important. And I think especially for interns or people, even just, early stage new hires, like the relationship building. And I think about my own experience entering the workforce. I learned so much from people just by sitting near them, or, built relationships with people that have lasted my whole career. And that's a little bit harder, and it has to be more intentional when you're in a remote environment. It's not impossible, but you can't just go about your day with all of your to-do lists and those are the only conversations you have. There's got to be more to it.
Exactly. I've been fortunate. I've been a remote employee for almost my entire career.
Wow.
So I've learned how to work in this environment long before it became the status quo. But to your point, by doing that, you learn how to develop those personal relationships, and you have to break down the barriers. You have to figure out those people who are kind of your people, your friends that you're going to create and cultivate. I've left every job with at least one personal friend that I've kept through my life. And the only way you do that is allowing yourself to break down the barriers, be a little bit vulnerable, share, get to know people. And we all feel that. You feel it in person, you feel it remotely, who you can connect with. And we try as much as we can here.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And now going back to developing that next generation of marketers, as we were talking about before, there's now so many different specialty areas of marketing. There's brand, there's growth, there's demand generation, product marketing, always sort of new functions developing. How do you recommend an early, a student or somebody early in their career decides on a specialty that is right for them?
Um, I think all of us think we know what we want.
Hmm.
There's an area that interests you more than others. But if you're in school and getting internships or early career, I highly encourage you to take different types of assignments and not keep going back to the same thing. As a marketer, get some experience in social, get some experience in brand, get experience in content, get experience in demand generation, get as many different experiences and exposure as you can. You'll know what excites you, what starts to bubble up inside you, what drives you, and what your passion is. And then over time, you can continue to dive into that. But I will say also, in this world of fragmentation, the further you go down a rabbit hole of one functional area, the harder it is to pull yourself out of it. And I think that's one of the benefits of having started when I did, is that you started as a generalist and you branched out and you learned a lot of different things. Today, to go down into a specific function and only deep into that function, I think does you a bit of a disservice. I think you need to broaden. And I would even say for early career people, you take a role in one functional area. After a couple of years, ask for a rotation. Ask for a
Mm.
rotation into a different area and learn something else. Get a couple of rotations behind you, 2 or 3, before you start to figure out, is there one that I want, or do I want to continue to broaden my experiences across marketing? I think to go too deep too fast, you do yourself a disservice.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was always that old sort of T-shaped marketer aspiration, right? Like sort of know a little bit about everything and then have something that you're specialized in. I think I heard that's no longer a thing. People don't like the T-shape thing anymore, but I don't know what it's been replaced with yet. But it's that same concept of like, even when we were talking about the 4 Ps, right? Like the 4 Ps are kind of now fragmented into different specialties. Like the person responsible for promotion is not the person responsible for product marketing, right? Like those
Oh,
are
absolutely.
very different functions now, but sort of starting across all four and then going down a route that you were really drawn to is a great way to kind of build your career.
Yeah, and I would say the one thing people really need to think about, and I don't think you realize this when you are early in your career, is that you are responsible for your career. Your manager is not responsible for your career. So you have to take control of it. You have to lean in, you have to ask for opportunities, you have to seek out those opportunities and not be afraid to ask. If you think someone else is going to drive your career for you, you're badly mistaken. People will look out for you if you ask them to, if they'll mentor you and they'll help you find opportunities, but you have to ask. And if you don't ask, they're not going to come to you.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I think to add to that too, like you're responsible for your own career development as well. Like
Yeah.
there is so much learning that you can do independently of what's presented to you at school or at work, and being proactive about like seeking out different experts online to follow or podcasts to listen to or books to read or learning courses and master classes. Like it's being proactive in your learning and development is only going to help you, like, and like you said, like asking for mentorship, asking for advice and learning is great too, but a demonstration that you've been trying to learn some stuff on your own and then going to your mentor or your boss with, hey, I read this or I learned this, what do you think, is just going to help propel you forward in a totally different way.
Absolutely. One of the things that we also offer our interns as well as all of our employees here is free access to Coursera, free access to
Mm,
Blinkist, Audible. We believe in people being lifelong learners. It's, take control of your own career, continue to learn, particularly as a marketer. The field is changing so much. If you're not staying on top of the new capabilities, the new functions, the new apps, the new, you know, opportunities, you're going to fall behind so quickly in this field. And so, we encourage everybody to learn. And as a student, continue to learn. As an early graduate, continue to learn, take up those opportunities. I want to talk a little bit about mentorship. As a new grad, people are often afraid to ask for a mentor, or they expect a company to create a mentorship program. Not every company does. And so you shouldn't be afraid, if there's somebody that you respect or you want to learn from, to reach out and say, look, I'm really interested in having a mentor. I need to learn. I need some guidance. Would you be that for me? 9 times out of 10, the person's going to be flattered and say, yes, I am. And then you can structure what that mentorship looks like. But don't be afraid to ask for help, ask for mentorship. Again, put your career in your own hands. You're going to be the one who drives it. You're going to be the one who has to learn and has to find your way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing too, like having a mentor in marketing is great, but some advice somebody gave me when I was very early in my career, when I was starting my first job, they said, find somebody in another department
Sure.
that's been there for a long time. And there was a woman in finance who, just really helped me navigate the business and the office and the people. But also as a marketer, I mean, we were talking about storytelling before, you have to understand how what the work you're doing benefits and needs to collaborate with these other functions. And so thinking of yourself as a salesperson or as a customer success person or a product person or even a finance person can really help your career. So don't narrow your thoughts or your aspirations to, oh, my mentor has to be a marketer. They could be in any department, and that can really help broaden your experience as well.
I totally agree. In fact, we were talking about what skills does a new marketer need. I want to take that one step further. As a person entering the business world, the skill you need is to understand the business. So finding a mentor who can talk to you about how the business is run, can explain to you the goals of the business, understand the financial perspectives of it, the legal perspectives of it, is so important. You need to be a business person, not just a marketer, to succeed and to grow. Getting that broader understanding of how the business is run is so critical. So yes, I agree with you. Never get a mentor within your team. First and foremost, never, ever, ever, never ask your manager to be your mentor. And find somebody at least 2 levels above you and in another department. But you also want to make sure that person understands your function. They don't have to understand marketing intimately, but they do have to understand the role that marketing plays and be an advocate for marketing.
That's such great advice. Such great advice. I really want to figure out, how can we get people who have been in marketing for 20, 30 years into these internship programs. I want to be an intern. I want to learn the kind of new, obviously there's the sort of, continuous learning and developing that we're all doing. But I always find it so interesting how CMOs have such a short tenure in business, and it's often because people are coming up behind with experience in what's current and what's happening now. So I'm like, where's my internship program? How can I get in with the kind of next generation of marketers? But maybe there's an element of, I think that's actually what I could learn from having an intern group is an additional having a program like that in place.
Yeah, we learn as much from the interns as we hope the interns learn from us. When you're bringing in young, eager, innovative individuals, you're learning from them as well, because they're doing things and seeking information and learning about products in ways that don't necessarily come into our day-to-day. So they teach us. So, I would encourage, as I said, every company to look at interns, because you're not just getting help for getting work done. You're learning new things from them. You're getting insights. You're finding new ways in which consumers or customers are getting information, new ways of doing things that you hadn't thought of. The other thing to think about, Jen, is as senior marketers ourselves, to think about volunteering our time for not-for-profits. And that's another way that we get to stretch ourselves and to learn to do things that we wouldn't necessarily do in our day-to-day jobs, because you're taking on a different industry, a different audience base, and having to go about doing things in a different way.
Oh, that's great advice. I love that. That's great. You know what else I'm wondering? What, like, for an intern program as large as the one that you're running, 65 interns last summer, how are you recruiting for the
Mhm.
program? Are you working with universities, or, what's the best way to find people?
We were trying a lot of different ways. We do a lot through LinkedIn. All of our jobs get posted on LinkedIn. Obviously, everything on our website. We were working through some schools. There were some very specific schools that we were trying to work through, um, and going to their online career fairs and just sort of putting ourselves out there and saying we had these internships or talking about our company and encouraging them to go to our website to look for internships because we had so many posted. Um, but we find LinkedIn actually works exceptionally well for posting. I would
Mm,
say in some cases, we were getting over 500 applicants per role in some cases.
wow. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and that takes a lot to sift through. So I would say when you are a student putting together your resume, here's some really key tips. Make sure that you are very focused on value that you brought to the company. Show us metrics, show us what you did to contribute to the business. Don't tell me what you did, but how what you did brought value. Demonstrate how the job that you are applying for relates to something you've done in the past. If you haven't had an internship before, talk about what you did in school, talk about some assignments you had to do, talk about research that you've had to do, but make sure that you are relating what you've done back to the job that you're applying for because we get so many. We're looking for those types of things. We're looking for people who can demonstrate that they understand what value is to a company and how what they've done before can be related to what we're asking for today.
That's great. Thank you so much. I love learning about how this is all structured because I think there's a lot of resistance to putting these programs in place because it feels like, it's a lot. It is a lot to manage, and but your tips I think just make it simpler and easier and more structured, and you've got a path for making sure everybody's getting value out of it. So, anyways, thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
My pleasure. And I am really passionate about this. So I welcome anybody who's interested. Feel free to reach out to me. Send me, a message in LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to you about this. The more students that we can get through internships, I think the better off we all are. So happy to share my knowledge and my advice to anyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And thanks everyone for tuning in today. I'll be back.